I quit drinking overnight, and this is how. I got super drunk on New Year's Eve, 1981. Still drinking, just again, that was probably the wrong move. I should have gone and did something else. So when I got out of the military, I thought that night that I was going to be arrested, handcuffed, and taken away because of what I did. I quit drinking overnight, and this is how. My name's Dave Panozzo. I am a team leader, Panozzo team, here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I run a real estate team, and I'll be honest with you, I'm just gonna get super real with you in how I got sober. Perfect, so here's a backstory. Grew up in a loving household, didn't have any craziness in terms of, when I grew up. In the late 60s, early 70s, when I got into high school, my freshman year is the first time I had a drink. And I'll never forget that because it was kind of crazy. I got super drunk on New Year's Eve, 1981. And the first time I drank, I literally blacked out. First time. It was insane, and I thought that that was normal. And so being the first time, having a blackout, and then over the years through high school, I would get so ripped that 9 times out of 10, I would end up blacking out. Again, I thought that was normal. My sophomore year, I started smoking weed. That was the cool thing to do. Got in with the wrong crowd. And take in mind, I was an okay student, but my grades were just right on the cusp. Played sports, even got to a point to where one time I remember I was benched for 3 or 4 games because my grades weren't good enough. So I was not the best student. I wasn't challenged. Senior year, I tried some harder stuff, still drinking, just again, I was lost. Parents always super coming down hard on me, grounded, so on and so forth. So I would end up getting super drunk and then getting in trouble, getting grounded. I would be ungrounded and then get drunk and get in trouble. Just dumb stuff. Well, I ended up going into college. That was crazy. That was probably the wrong move. I should have gone and did something else, but I went into college, partied like a rock star, worked in a bar, joined a fraternity, dropped out of school during spring break, never came back, and then literally partied like a rock star for another probably 6 to 8 months. Well, that was a pivotal moment, okay? Joined the military, now I had to do some growing up. But what do they do in the military? They drank. We would drink a lot. Okay, I was stationed in Germany, so the beer alcohol content was way up there. And of course, my buddies and I, we would just rip and roar and tear it up, and that was normal. So when I got out of the military, I was still ripping and roaring, but my wife saw this other side of me, especially after we had our first child. At that point, it was definitely a problem. It was starting to affect things. And I remember when we moved back to Ohio, I got pretty out of control and got really, really drunk, and the police had to come. And that was the first time that I was like, oh man, I do have a problem. And I stopped. Now, I was a dry drunk at that point. I really didn't deal with the real problems, okay? And so that went on for a couple years of me kind of skirting, but then I would also drink, behind the scenes every once in a while. She really didn't know, it was no big deal, didn't get in any trouble. But then fast forward, probably about 1998, give or take, 97, somewhere in there, started drinking again. And that's when it got really, really bad. Got into some hard drugs, wasn't very proud of that. I knew it was wrong, but I kept doing it and needed more, and I couldn't stop. I literally couldn't stop. I would wake up super hungover and be like, this is the day that I am not gonna drink or use drugs. 6, 7, 8 hours later after work, I would end up getting drunk, getting high, whatever it may be. And this constant rotation of, it was like Groundhog Day, over and over and over. And I'll never forget, so it was July 22nd, 2006. We were at a neighborhood party, and our neighbors lived maybe about a dozen houses up the street. And so I was ripping and roaring, vodka tonics, beer, I was probably high. I went overboard. And somehow I was in a semi-blackout. I walked home, got behind the wheel of my truck, and drove down the street and ended up hitting a parked car. Thank God no one was in the car, but I smashed into this car and totaled it. Drove to the end of the street, circled back around, came up, parked in my driveway, ran inside, and hid in the closet. Now, I'm super shameful of this because my oldest daughter at the time, I think she was probably like 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. She was a part of that. And as a father, you never want your kids to see you at your worst, but that was my bottom of the bottom. And so I thought that night that I was going to be arrested, handcuffed, and taken away because of what I did. At the time, we were doing halfway decent, so we lived in a gated community, and the police came up, they knocked on the door. By that time, my wife came home because my daughter called my wife. She comes home. What the hell's going on? Complete, utter chaos, okay? Cops come, my wife comes and says, hey, the cops want to see you. They didn't come inside. They said, hey, you need to come outside. They need to verify who you are. I come out finally, and the cop tells me, he goes, this is your lucky day. Because you live behind the gates in a private community, you get to get out of going to jail tonight. He goes, you better get your act together. Passed out that night. Next morning, my wife wrote down 2 rehab facilities that she goes, you either call these and make a change, or I'm gonna ask you to leave. I sat there all day. I think it was like 6, 7 hours. I literally stared at the 2 phone numbers, the telephone, and contemplated whether or not if I should go to rehab. Like, that's how sick I was, that's how messed up I was, to weigh out, do I keep drinking or do I keep my family? Like, that was literally a choice that I was contemplating, and I didn't know which way to go. And finally I made the phone call, and my head was so far up my ass at that time that I was embarrassed, number one, to go to rehab. And I asked, I said, hey, do you have any private, like, one-on-one type lessons that you can just fix me real quick so I can go back and like no one will know about it? And they're like, yeah, we don't have any programs like that. So I called the other place. They're like, yeah, we don't have any programs like that. So I ended up calling the first place again and said, hey, I'd like to come in and set an appointment and have a conversation of what this would look like. That was on July 23rd, 2006.